G'day, welcome to Sam After Work. This is the second part of the video going through the fundamentals of a long-range precision rifle and what matters in the way of finding accuracy. We've been through the back end of the rifle, buttstock and all those bits and pieces back here. We're going through the straight line of push of your rifle stock receiver, whatever it is, the chassis. The next bit now, I suppose, is this little gang here. Quite a complicated bit of these bits and pieces here. And I suppose top to tail on this one, top to bottom on this one. At the moment, this is set up exactly as I use this rifle, as I mentioned before. It has a Chinese scope on it, a decent quality Chinese scope. Still very, very low value in the way of, high value, low cost. But it is, I suppose, a pretty good example of the point that a rifle scope is more about you need enough clarity and not much more. You need consistent dialing, very important. You need a good reticle, bits and pieces, all those things are important, but you can literally spend 10 times as much more, and in good conditions and a average day, depending how you're using it, you're not going to find any more accuracy. There is a little bit of spending a lot more and getting very good glass, and there's a little bit of status that goes with that sort of stuff, but there's a little bit of patriotism to your brand, to that sort of stuff, to your country, all those sort of things. These are all very relevant details. But in the way of accuracy, good glass can help in low light situations. Very good glass can help in very good light situations, or low light situations. It can help in eye fatigue, in how you're using it, all that sort of stuff. There's a little bit in spending money in scopes in the way of your service backup, all that type of thing. There is, I suppose, but without getting too much more into that, accuracy comes out of being able to see clearly enough, your reticle being able to see that clearly, and when you dial, that happens clearly. So that's where it actually matters on that point, and not much more than that. So it is relevant, but it's not super relevant. In the way of what can create a lot of accuracy issues is parallax in the scope. It's a big deal, making sure that works properly, and your scope needs to do that properly. And you need how to understand it, do it properly. There is a video on the channel about parallax, but that's a big part of accuracy, parallaxing a scope properly. Setting up a scope at the right height to work for shoulder, butt pedal, that sort of stuff, that works really, that is very important. The other thing that's very important as we come down from that, the rings and the rail, as to making sure that they are fitted correctly, that you don't want there any movement or any inconsistency to be in there. So the one-piece rails, they can be a good thing. Depends, there's also, can you set up your scope properly with that sort of stuff? Your rings matching your scope properly, and they're doing that thoroughly, whether it's lapping. All those things matter, and I'll get into in details later on. But mainly the fundamentals on it, you want a decent scope that's parallaxed correctly, that has reasonable, good enough glass, that dials well, that's clamped properly to the top of the receiver, or to the top of the action. If you've got all that, you've got as much accuracy as you can find. Your action. Actually, there is your strength of the action can matter for different bits and pieces. How that it's true and it's accurate. So the bolts clamping down properly to the back of the brass, all that sort of stuff are very important. Beyond that point, branding, all that sort of stuff, it doesn't matter very much about that side of things. There's a little bit in strength and how you use them, and how much you can, how easy they are to set up a new barrel on, all that sort of stuff. That's relevant. But accuracy, they're a fundamental piece. The bit that matters the most is how they actually clamp and how they actually attach to the stock, to the receiver. Stock, chassis, wherever it is, how they clamp. They want to be able to be attached in there thoroughly, but the main thing is that they don't have an issue. So whether it needs bedding or it is a chassis that doesn't need bedding, it doesn't really matter, is that they are consistent. They can be a point, if they've got multiple points of contact, and they potentially can hit that differently from shot to shot, that can really destroy accuracy. So there tends to be a little bit in some of the cheaper stuff that isn't so good. Doesn't mean cheap's bad, but if you have an issue where you're looking for accuracy and it is a cheap stock, that might be a place you can do some messing with. That might be a place that's got some issues. Cheap stock, bad match with the chassis, doesn't really matter, but that's not lining up properly. Bolts are, and that's a little bit hard to work out, but that is a place where accuracy can exist. This is a no magazine, but magazines, listen, really nothing to do with it unless they're touching in places they shouldn't be. They can be ergonomically for how you use them, that sort of stuff. That can be an issue, but they're not really an accuracy thing. In some places, in going for the most accuracy, there you'll find, like this action is, it doesn't have that extra slot for a magazine in the bottom, so it's single feed only. That's designed about the fact that having more rigidity, more strength in the actual action, because it doesn't have that other big hole cut in it, makes it a bit stronger. And there's a logic to that, which gets into the F class and bench rare shooting, where you're looking for even more. And that can be conceivable, but it doesn't mean that that is all it's about. That there's other things involved with that process. Your trigger and your grip. Listen, the grip is really an ergonomics thing, whether it's thumb rest or it's the type of grip, pistol grip, all that sort of stuff. Really, comfort, yes, for sure. Confidence, maybe a tiny bit. The functionality is relevant to how you feel about it. Little to do with accuracy. Trigger, okay, there is a big deal. Trigger needs to work properly. And it's not the case if you need a half-pound target trigger is the only way you can be accurate, because you'll find that there is a balance where that works. You can get too light. Triggers can be too light, it's as simple as that. You lose confidence because you can hardly sneak up on the trigger without touching it. That's a problem. Even more of a problem the more the rifle bangs and you've got to push other bits and pieces on it, or you've got to try and deal with it more. A really light trigger is a problem. A super heavy trigger, yeah, listen, it's hard to work with. It doesn't mean it can't be accurate if you have got used to it. The main thing in a trigger is that it's a clean break and it's consistent. The sogginess, they're having to squeeze through, all that sort of stuff and waiting for that sort of stuff, no, it isn't where to find accuracy. Doesn't mean you can't be accurate with it, as long as you do the right thing, you're pulling straight through, you hold your trigger back, or the follow through, all those things are relevant, and that's more a form conversation. But other than that, consistency is the main thing there. Generally lighter, generally 1 pound, 1.5 pounds is where I'd prefer to be. That's a nice place to be. It's a nice balance. But listen, some people really do go down to 1/4 pound and places I'd never go with the trigger. But that's a bit of a personal thing also. So that's where I'll stop at that place there. That's the setup. The next video will be about the forend here. But an important place here, mainly your mating of your barrel to your chassis and a consistent trigger with decent controls on your optics, is the important places in that situation. So anyway guys, that's that video. I'll see you for the next one, which will be the last one in this fundamentals series of 3 videos about your rifle.